I was having y'all, but Rico from Street Scores, and I'm coming to y'all with a Rico report. A lot of things to discuss today, and I'm gonna do a lot of these Rico reports throughout the off season. If it's a lot of different things we need to talk about that's happened since the last time I made a video, we're gonna cover it all in one video. And today we gotta talk about, is Washington really that desperate for a new quarterback? It's reported that they're willing to trade anyone for a top quarterback, and we of course have to discuss who would you be willing to trade for a quarterback, who's off limits most notably. Also, we're going to talk about how some more analysts love and prefer Russell Wilson to DC, neutral analyst. And then there's also some new betting odds that came out about Carson Wentz to DC being a real possibility. Also, our tight ends coach Pete Honer retired, and we already hired his replacement. We of course got to talk about that, how much we lose with Pete Honer now gone and what we may possibly gain with the replacement. Also, Jonathan Allen and Kendall Fuller are both in Pro Football Focus's top 100 players from the 2021 season. And lastly, Washington reportedly wants a new running back to add to the Antonio Gibson and JD McKissic running back room. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, like I already said, I'm going to be doing Rico reports all throughout the off season, so stay tuned. Any updates that goes down with the team, I got y'all. Of course, I will be working on some more mock drafts. I'll be working on my quarterback series, where each episode I give each individual quarterback their entire episode breaking down why we should get them, why we shouldn't. For the trade and free agent options, how much will they cost? Specifically for the trade options, what will we possibly have to give up to get them as far as trade picks and players? And for the draft guys, what round may they be available? What are their weaknesses and strengths? All of that type of stuff. So stay tuned for the infinite content, especially throughout this off season. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so first of all, I got these guys on the screen because we're going to talk about this when we get to the part where we discuss who's untradeable. But first up, I saw a headline saying that Washington would reportedly trade, quote, almost anyone, unquote, to acquire a top-tier quarterback this offseason. But to be really specific, it's not a report necessarily out of the Washington football team front office or organization directly. It's through Ben Standig of The Athletic, and he's a pretty close source to the organization. He usually knows how the organization is thinking and how they feel about certain things. But the way that this was technically reported, the way it was worded, he does his mailbag thing every once in a while where he answers questions and things like that. And he said, quote, I think almost anyone on the roster is available if the result is Washington improving at quarterback. In Young's case, that would mean the Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson level, unquote. So basically, there's different tiers. Of course, they wouldn't trade Chase Young, Terry McLaurin, or Jonathan Allen, these guys I have on the screen, if it's for anybody below the caliber of like a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, or things like that. If we're talking about like Jimmy G, Mitchell Trubisky, or any of those guys, maybe even Derek Carr, that takes these guys that you see on the screen off the table completely. But when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, like I already said, Ben Standig feels like the Washington organization is willing to do anything that it would take to get those guys, and that's including possibly trading away even one of these three players that you see on the screen. The three most untradeable players you could definitely say on this team. There's a reason that they chose this specific three to reveal the new colors and logo, name, jerseys, all of that type of stuff. These guys are very important to the franchise. There are faces of the franchise. So it'd be really weird if we ended up trading one of them for one of those guys. Again, to emphasize, to reiterate, this is just Ben Standig, a reporter that's closely involved with the Washington organization, saying that he feels like that they would trade anybody that they have to go and get one of those quarterbacks. I'm not even exactly sure if that means would they be more willing to give up one of those guys that you see on the screen over a first round pick, like to save first round picks instead of sending 3 first round picks to say the Texans for Deshaun Watson. Would they include one of these players and keep one of their first round picks as a preference over keeping all of these guys and send them as many picks as possible? Do they value picks more, or do they value these guys more? Naturally, I feel like we would value these guys more, because you never know what's going to happen with first round picks, and we know that these three guys are stars, and Chase Young especially, I think he has the potential to be. We haven't exactly seen it yet when it comes to what he's done on the field production wise compared to Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin. McLaurin, but I feel like Chase Young will also be a star eventually. I think he'll have a big bounce back season this year. So that leads me to the point. Make sure y'all get in the comment section and let me know what would y'all be willing to trade for any of these top quarterbacks, and which quarterback specifically, because I know a lot of people don't want Russell Wilson. There's a lot of people that don't want Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of people that don't want Aaron Rodgers because of his age and how much it'll cost, all kinds of stuff. So definitely let me know which quarterback you want the most. In any of these three players you see on the screen, are you willing to trade them up for them? And then even get more specific, would you be willing to give up like an Antonio Gibson or a Daron Payne? I mean, Daron Payne makes sense because we're probably not going to end up paying him big money anyway. He's probably going to end up leaving for free in free agency anyway. So if you can package a trade to get a top tier quarterback that includes Daron Payne, and that helps save us a first or a second round pick, I think it may be worth it. But for me, I'm gonna have to see some example of trade scenarios and then I go yes or no. But I think for me personally, I wouldn't be willing to trade these three guys, especially like Terry McLaurin doesn't make any sense, because you trade Terry McLaurin away to get a quarterback. Now that quarterback basically has nobody to throw to. I think that would just be hustling backwards right there. Depending on what we would end up giving up for any of these quarterbacks, we would just become the team again that they just left. Like say we trade Terry McLaurin and Chase Young and some first round picks for Russell Wilson to the Seahawks. Now when Russell Wilson gets here, maybe our defense is still better overall than the Seahawks, but it's still not great. It's not going to be elite. And then you don't have first round picks to add to it, which is going to be really hard to make it better. And then you're giving away Terry McLaurin. So now he has worse weapons than he had in Seattle. So like, why would Russell Wilson even want to deal with that? He would go to a worse situation after all of that. I mean, the offensive line would be better, but he would have less weapons and the defense would almost be comparable to what he had in Seattle if we're trading away Jonathan Allen and or Chase Young in the process. So make sure you keep that in mind, that when you trade one or two of these guys or even more of these guys away to get a quarterback, remember, like, this quarterback's gonna have to come here and deal with trying to win games without those guys on the team. But this is basically reported just like the Jimmy G stuff, where it seemed like it came out of Washington and it seemed like it basically came from Rivera or Martin Mayhew themselves, but it was more so just a reporter saying this is what they think. And that's the same thing with this Ben Standig situation. What he feels like Washington would be willing to trade face of franchise type of players to go get a quarterback. But who knows if they actually feel that way. But that lets me know that with as close as he is to the organization, that makes me happy that they really do prioritize getting a franchise quarterback. They swing and miss on all of these top guys, like free agency and trade wise. I think they're gonna prioritize it in the draft heavily. Like, I think they may even be willing to trade up to get their favorite guy if it comes to that. So that makes me happy to hear that part about it, but I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt as far as them willing to give up face or franchise type of players. Moving on, more analysts love and prefer Russell Wilson to DC. David Carr on NFL Network just came out and said that it would be a great move for Russell Wilson to go to DC. If you go look at the video, he actually breaks down how apparently there's reports that Russell Wilson is holding the Seahawks back, not the Seahawks holding him back, even though the offensive line is terrible. DK is a really good receiver, but he's fairly inconsistent. The defense isn't great. So I don't know how the Seahawks came to that conclusion, but that's what Derek Carr said in this video, that that's how the Seahawks are feeling about Russell Wilson. So that in itself lets me know that the Seahawks are probably more willing to trade away Russell Wilson than we originally believed. I thought they were wanting to hold on to Russell Wilson, and the only reason this Russell Wilson out of Seahawks trade rumor stuff even started was because Russell Wilson wanted to go. But if the Seahawks even feel like it's time to move on from Russell Wilson, that makes things very interesting and makes it a very realistic possibility that we go and trade for him. But David Carr said, quote, "Go to Washington. I think that would be a great move, packaged with a great defense and some nice skill position players. I think that would be fantastic to watch him go play for Washington," unquote. And he didn't even include offensive line. People keep forgetting that we had a top 5 offensive line when healthy this past season, and Russell Wilson's never even come close to having a top 5 offensive line in his career playing for the NFL. I think if anything, that's what you would sell him on the most. I think you start with how much we would pay him when we extend him and re-sign him, and I think second is offensive line. Then you start to get the Terry and the defense coaches and all of that. But I think offensive line is the thing that would make Russell Wilson want to come here the most, outside of money, of course, if he cares about that. And also very recently, Will Blackman said, quote, "If Russell Wilson were to leave Seattle, the best team for him is right back home with the Commanders," unquote. And I mean, there's two things you take from that. First of all, for those of y'all that may not know, Russell Wilson is from Virginia, so that's why he said back home with the Commanders. And then also, Will Blackman worded it as the best team. Like, not just a team or a good team, a great team. He said literally the best situation he could go to would be the Washington Commanders. And I agree, again, for the reasons I've already outlined. Plus, what I have spoken about in several videos and live streams, but not this video specifically yet, is that, I mean, it has to be pretty enticing to have an opportunity to be the first face of the franchise of a new brand. We just became the Washington Commanders. We haven't even seen our team in jerseys live on the field yet. Me personally, if I'm a top tier quarterback, I would love the opportunity to be the first face of a new brand, new franchise, logo, name, jerseys, all of that. And moving on, in less exciting news for sure, Carson Wentz has plus 400 odds to be the next quarterback for the Washington Commanders. It's also been reported via The Athletic that it would be, quote, virtually impossible, unquote, for the Colts to bring back Carson Wentz in 2022. So I'm assuming that has to deal with money situation and cap space and how much money he would be owed / asking for. So that's really interesting. It basically seems like Carson Wentz is not going to go back with the Colts. So let's go ahead and get that out the way. It's highly unlikely that he stays with the Colts, which means they probably will be trying to get a quarterback in the draft. They may be like a spot where one of those guys like Sam Howell, Matt Corral, or Desmond Ridder falls to. But most importantly for us, it seems like Carson Wentz is a likely possibility to become our next quarterback. And again, the betting odds provided by Bovada Official say that it is plus 400. That's scary realistic. But how do y'all feel about Carson Wentz potentially becoming our quarterback? I already know what the comment section gonna look like for that one. And now, in very sad news, our tight ends coach Pete Honer retired. And I'm sad. This is a big L for our team, because to me, I feel like he's been our best assistant coach easily. You can argue best coach, only behind John Moscow, our offensive lines coach. It's literally John Moscow, Big Gap, Pete Honer, and then Big Gap, and then everybody else. I mean, what those guys have been able to do with the talent that they have, I mean, the injuries we had on the offensive line, I mean, thank goodness for John Moscow. I mean, he should have won Coach of the Year just for that performance alone. Top 5 offensive line, and we were at a certain point using 5th string centers, 3rd string guards, backup tackles. I mean, it was just a nightmare scenario for injuries, especially offensive line wise this past season, and he found a way to make it work. And then Pete Honer, the development of Logan Thomas, taking him from a 1-year very cheap prove it deal. Lions didn't want him. Now he's considered potentially, when healthy, a top 10 tight end in the NFL, dual threat, able to block, run routes, catch everything thrown his way. And then the development of John Bates within just his rookie season, and how I'm very optimistic about the fact that we now, when healthy, have 2 dual threat tight ends, and we could potentially run 12 personnel all of the time as much as we want to, which is something Scott Turner's always wanted to run, something that Jay Gruden wanted to run, but we couldn't because we didn't even have 1 dual threat tight end back in those days. Remember Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, obvious passing downs, Jeremy Sprinkle, obvious running down. If we tried to mix and match it any type of way, mix it up, it would usually fail. Jeremy Sprinkle couldn't catch, Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis couldn't block. But now we have Logan Thomas and John Bates potentially as both dual threat tight ends, and Pete Honer gets the majority of the credit for that. But they are replacing Pete Honer with Juan Castillo. He will now be our new tight ends coach. And it's interesting because Castillo worked with Ron Rivera about 2 decades ago back in Philadelphia, and was most recently Chicago's offensive lines coach, which doesn't make me too optimistic. But one thing about it, I mean, the fact that his most recent job was an offensive lines coach, at the very end of the day, our tight ends should be able to block better. That's one thing we're going to get out of him. Now, I'm not exactly sure about how well he'll be able to develop their receiving capabilities, their route running, their hands and things like that, which I feel like, if anything, John Bates could definitely use some more route running development. But blocking wise, I think he's pretty straight. But that's nice to know that we're getting an offensive lines coach at tight end, because any tight end we bring in here through free agency or the draft, maybe way late in the draft, whoever, at the very least, I can believe that they will be able to block at the end of the day. If anything they can do, they'll be able to block. Moving on, Jonathan Allen and Kendall Fuller were both in Pro Football Focus's top 100 players from the 2021 season. Not exactly sure why Terry McLaurin wasn't there, but it's nice to know that Jonathan Allen and Kendall Fuller were both there, both born and raised in Virginia, so that's really interesting. I'm also surprised with as much love as Brandon Sheriff gets making Pro Bowls when he doesn't exactly deserve it. He wasn't in it, but Pro Football Focus, I guess, sees through that. But Jonathan Allen was ranked 54th on the top 101 players, and Kendall Fuller Fuller was ranked 73rd. Jonathan Allen had an 84.9 overall grade, which was the 4th highest amongst interior defensive linemen on the list, and Kendall Fuller had an 81.5 overall grade, which was 5th amongst cornerbacks on this list. It's crazy too, because Jonathan Allen wasn't on this list at all last year, and now he's all the way up to 54. But this was a breakout season for him. He got more money with a deal and ended up playing even better, which is really good to know, because normally guys get money and fall off a cliff. And lastly, it's been reported that Washington wants a new running back. Washington could be interested in adding to the running back position in more ways than just re-signing J.D. McKissic, according to Ben Standig, the same person that reported that they may be willing to trade whoever they got to get a top-tier quarterback. It's been reported that Washington is discussing adding another running back this season to pair with J.D. McKissic and Antonio Gibson, likely a tough runner who can get through contact and up the middle to preserve Gibson and McKissic as specialists. And that makes sense, because I love Antonio Gibson, 1,000-yard running back, but I mean, based off of what you saw him do on that screen against the Bills, I want him doing more stuff like that. Honestly, after the way I saw Cordell Patterson being used by the Falcons this year, I think we should start using Antonio Gibson like that. Let J.D. McKissic still have the role that he has, and he's our best pass blocking running back, so he always has a role on this team. I really hope we re-sign him, but not for crazy money. It's not worth it to pay running backs crazy money, period, let alone, I mean, specifically a third down back in J.D. McKissic. I love his blocking. I love what he contributes in the passing game, but don't overpay for him. And then I would like to go get a bruising running back. Antonio Gibson, I mean, the thing that made us fans angry with him all season was his inability to pick up 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts. I mean, it would literally be 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, and he just couldn't find a way to get over. Even with as good of an offensive line that we have, he just couldn't find a way to get that inch out the mud. There's just some guys that are just straight bruisers that even if the offensive line doesn't block it well enough, they're going to find a way to get that 1 yard that we need, or even less than a yard. Antonio Gibson just hasn't shown that consistently at all. So it would be nice to get a guy that can take the punishment while we use Antonio Gibson in more of like a Cordell Patterson role, and then J.D. McKissic can keep doing J.D. McKissic things. I think that would be perfect. But it just depends, like, are we going to wait till the draft to do that? Or are we going to bring over, say, like a Leonard Fournette? I don't know. We'll see. Really interesting, though. Definitely get in the comment section and let me know how y'all feel about that as well. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section and let me know how you feel about everything we discussed in this video, especially the quarterback part, the running back part, all of it. And of course, man, I appreciate the support, man. Shouts out to everybody that donates to the streams, pull ups to the stream, leaves a like, all of that, man. I really appreciate y'all, and shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now, man. I really appreciate y'all. Catch y'all later. I'm out.